At 1647 local time, a Russian Sukhoi Su-34 Fullback roared off the runway at Sukhoi Air Base in Crimea, its afterburners kicking up a haze of heat that distorted the horizon. The pilot and his weapons systems officer settled into the titanium armored cockpit, convinced this was just another routine milk run in a war they thought they were winning. Their mission profile was standard: a 40-minute sortie to deliver a pair of heavy glide bombs on coordinates provided by intelligence officers who likely had never stepped foot on a battlefield. The crew believed they were the hunters, apex predators in a $36 million machine designed to rain high-explosive death from the stratosphere. But what neither man knew was that they were already dead. They were simply ghosts flying a coffin that hadn't hit the ground yet. From the precise moment their landing gear retracted into the fuselage, a set of cold, unblinking eyes 18 kilometers inside Ukrainian territory had locked onto them, hidden deep within a dense tree line or covered by multispectral camouflage netting that scrambles both visual and thermal sensors. A Ukrainian Patriot battery commander was watching their every move. He wasn't relying on active radar that would scream his position to the enemy. He was tracking them using a network of passive sensors that listened to the electromagnetic whispers of the Russian jet. The pilot thought he was flying a stealthy mission, running silent with no radar emissions. In reality, the friction of air rushing over his airframe at 870 kilometers per hour turned his jet into a blazing torch on the thermal spectrum, a flashlight in a dark room that he couldn't switch off. The Sukhoi Su-34 climbed through 15,000 feet, banking onto a heading of 330 degrees. The pilot kept his eyes on the threat warning receiver, a circular display designed to alert him if a hostile radar locked onto his aircraft. It remained comforting and blank, showing nothing but the background static of the electromagnetic spectrum. To him, the sky was empty. His electronic warfare suite, the vaunted Khibiny system mounted on the wingtips, showed green across the board. These pods are the pride of the Russian aerospace forces, advertised as being able to jam any Western missile system and create ghost targets that can fool even the most advanced radars. The weapons systems officer in the right seat began configuring the release parameters for their payload. They were carrying the devastating UMPK glide bombs, dumb iron bombs retrofitted with pop-out wings and satellite guidance kits. At 18,000 feet, they were 11 minutes away from the launch basket, a geometrically defined slice of airspace where physics dictates the bombs can glide to their target. The coordinates corresponded to a grid square in central Kherson. Maybe it was a command bunker, or maybe it was just another apartment block filled with civilians. The officer didn't care. His job was simply to align the math. But while they monitored their instruments, the laws of physics were plotting a different trajectory for their evening. The Ukrainian battery commander had been waiting for this specific geometry for weeks. This wasn't a target of opportunity. It was a mathematical trap set with the patience of a spider. The atmosphere inside the Ukrainian engagement control station was thick with the hum of cooling fans and the palpable tension of men who know they are hunting a dragon. The battery commander stared at his screens, analyzing the passive tracking data that was being fed to him via fiber optic cables to avoid radio frequency detection. The Russian bomber was flying fat, happy, and predictable, cruising at 24,000 feet and throttled back to conserve fuel. It was the perfect target, a gift wrapped in aluminum and titanium. However, the commander knew that in the world of high-end air defense, gifts usually explode in your face. The Su-34 is not a helpless target drone. It is a highly maneuverable frontline bomber, flown by experienced crews who know that ejecting over enemy territory is a sentence they don't want to serve. The moment the Ukrainian radar went active to guide a missile, the Russian jet would transform from a passive target into a desperate cornered animal fighting for survival. And worse, turning on the main radar, the massive AN/MPQ-65 phased array is the electronic equivalent of lighting a flare in the middle of a dark forest while surrounded by wolves. It reveals your exact location to every electronic intelligence sensor within a 300-kilometer radius. The commander had to make a choice that balanced the destruction of a high-value enemy asset against the lives of his crew and the survival of a billion-dollar weapon system. The passive tracking system was good, but it wasn't good enough for a firing solution. It estimated the bomber's position based on thermal contrast and triangulation, creating a margin of error that was roughly 12 kilometers wide at that range. Trying to guide a kinetic interceptor into a 12-kilometer question mark is like trying to hit a bullet with another bullet while blindfolded. To kill the bomber, the commander needed to collapse that uncertainty cone down to a few meters. He needed hard range, speed, and elevation data, and the only way to get that was to unleash the power of the C-band radar. This system pumps out enough microwave energy to cook a turkey from a football field away, but that energy acts as a beacon. The commander ordered a single surgical emission. 3 seconds. That was the limit. The radar panels phased up, blasted a focused beam of energy into the sky, and shut down before the echoes even fully decayed. On the screen, the blurry blob of the Russian jet sharpened instantly. The uncertainty cone collapsed from 12 kilometers to under 2. They had a fix, but 3 seconds wasn't enough to calculate the range rate, the precise speed at which the target was closing. They still didn't have a firing solution, and now the clock was ticking on their own survival. That 3-second burst of radar energy did not go unnoticed. 800 meters above the battery, circling silently in the gray overcast, was a Russian Orlan-10 reconnaissance drone. It is a crude device, powered by a lawnmower engine and held together with hardware store components. But it carries a signals intelligence payload tuned to detect exactly one thing: the specific frequency fingerprint of a Patriot radar. The moment the battery transmitted, the Orlan's sensors spiked. It didn't get a precise coordinate lock from such a short burst, but it narrowed the search area from a massive swathe of forest to a few hundred square meters. The drone operator, sitting safely in a truck kilometers away, relayed the data to a Russian fire coordination center. The hunt was on. Within 60 seconds, the first FPV drone signal appeared on the Ukrainian spectrum analyzers, vectoring toward the tree line at 110 kilometers per hour. These weren't standard surveillance drones. These were flying munitions, cheap quadcopters strapped with rocket-propelled grenade warheads, designed to weave through trees and slam into fragile radar faces. The hunter had just become the hunted, and the game of electronic cat and mouse was about to turn violent. A Ukrainian Bukovel electronic warfare truck, parked 400 meters east of the launcher, roared to life. Its operators detected the control link of the incoming kamikaze drone and activated a directional jamming cone. They flooded the specific frequency band with white noise, drowning out the pilot's commands. The FPV drone, suddenly severed from its human master, wobbled in the air before pitching forward and crashing harmlessly into a plowed field. But electronic warfare is a double-edged sword. Jamming a signal is loud. It requires broadcasting high-power noise, which acts like a spotlight pointing directly at the jammer. Russian electronic warfare analysts now had a second data point. They knew something in that tree line was valuable enough to be protected by a high-end jammer. That is the kind of intelligence conclusion that gets artillery grid coordinates plotted. 40 seconds later, a second FPV drone appeared. The Bukovel jammed it. Then a third appeared, but this one was operating on 2.4 gigahertz instead of the usual 5.8. The Russians were frequency hopping, probing the defenses, looking for a gap in the electronic armor. The Ukrainian operator was sweating, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he cycled between 3 different threat axes. Every jam was another broadcast, another breadcrumb for the Russian artillery that was undoubtedly spinning its gears to aim. The situation in the command trailer was deteriorating rapidly. The battery commander checked the passive track again. The Su-34 was now at 20,000 feet, just 8 minutes from its bomb release point. He still didn't have a lock. He ordered a second radar burst, 4 seconds this time. The phased array lit up the sky again. The return was crystal clear. Bomber at 22,000 feet, range 81 kilometers, closing speed 14.5 kilometers per minute. The track quality jumped to high confidence, but the engagement control station still flagged the solution as degraded. They needed one more update to guarantee a hit, but this second emission was the mistake that sealed the battery's exposure. The Orlan drone overhead caught the pulse repetition interval, the heartbeat of the radar. Every radar system has a unique signature, like a digital fingerprint. The Orlan matched it against its threat library instantly. It wasn't just a search radar. It was confirmed as a Patriot, the single highest priority target for the Russian military. Destroying a Patriot isn't just a tactical win. It's a propaganda victory worth billions. Suddenly, the FPV activity spiked. 5, then 6 drones appeared on the scope, probing from different angles, swarming like angry hornets. The Bukovel system was overheating, its internal cooling fans screaming as it tried to maintain an omnidirectional jamming bubble around the precious radar. While the electronic battle raged, a Ukrainian drone team operating from a ruined basement 600 meters behind the battery decided to go on the offensive. They couldn't stop the swarm, but they could kill the queen. Using the direction of the Russian control signals, they triangulated the position of the enemy drone operators. They found them hiding behind a concrete wall in a dilapidated farm complex. The Ukrainian pilot launched a kinetic strike drone, diving it straight into the source of the signals. The Russian transmission stopped abruptly, but in modern warfare, there is always backup. Another Russian cell took over almost immediately, and the probes accelerated. Then, one of the Russian FPVs slipped through the jamming net. The Bukovel operator was overwhelmed, handling two signals at once, and a small black shape weaved through the canopy at knee height, heading straight for the nearest launcher tube. A Ukrainian Overwatch drone spotted it just in time and rammed it in midair. Both machines detonated in a fireball in the underbrush, the shockwave rattling the teeth of the crew standing next to the launcher. And then, the ground shook. The distinct, terrifying rumble of a BM-21 Grad rocket barrage tore through the air. 40 rockets, each carrying high explosives, arced toward the general area of the radar emissions. The Russians didn't have a pinpoint fix, so they were deleting the entire grid square. The rockets impacted in a ragged, chaotic pattern about 1,000 meters north of the battery. The two short radar bursts had created a spread in the Russian targeting data, rather than a precise point. The explosions were close enough to shake the vehicles on their suspension, but far enough to spare them from shrapnel. A Ukrainian counter-battery radar, located kilometers away, instantly tracked the incoming trajectories, calculated the point of origin, and sent the coordinates to an M777 howitzer battery. Within 60 seconds, 6 Excalibur GPS-guided rounds were screaming downrange with 2-meter accuracy. The Russian Grad launcher was silenced before it could reload, but the clock was still the enemy. The battery commander looked at his display. The Su-34 was at 24,000 feet, entering the edge of the engagement window. One more radar emission would give him a firing solution, but this time, he couldn't just flash the radar and go dark. The PAC-2 GEM-T interceptor missiles require continuous radar illumination to steer. They are semi-active seekers. They need the ground radar to paint the target with a continuous beam of energy all the way to impact. Think of it like a flashlight guiding a moth in the dark. If you turn off the flashlight, the moth goes blind. To kill the bomber, the commander would have to keep his radar on, screaming his position to the entire world for the entire duration of the missile's flight. It was a suicide pact with physics. If he turned the radar on for a continuous lock, every Russian sensor, every remaining drone, and every artillery piece in the sector would have a fixed, unmoving beacon to aim at. But the bomber was committed. At 1719, the Su-34 crossed the invisible line of no return. It was deep enough in the zone that any evasive turn would wreck its bombing run geometry. It was 90 seconds away from releasing its payload on the city. The commander didn't hesitate. At 1721, he ordered the radar to full power. This time, there was no 3-second limit. The beam blasted out, acquiring the bomber at 73 kilometers and locking it in less than 4 seconds. The fire control computer screamed, "Shoot." The first PAC-2 missile, a 900-kilogram telephone pole of high explosives and rocket fuel, roared off the rail, accelerating to Mach 5 in a heartbeat. The smoke trail pointed a giant white arrow right back to the launcher, and the continuous radar emission announced to the enemy that the gloves were off. The trap was sprung, but the hunter was now standing naked in the middle of the battlefield. In the Sukhoi's cockpit, the radar warning receiver didn't just beep. It lit up like a disco ball in hell. The pilot didn't need to consult the threat library to know what that continuous tone meant. A radar-guided missile was in the air, closing at hypersonic speeds. He immediately threw the 39-ton bomber into a violent defensive brake, rolling nearly inverted and pulling into a descending spiral that pinned both crew members into their ejection seats at 6 times the force of gravity. Simultaneously, the weapons systems officer frantically activated the Khibiny electronic countermeasure pods mounted on the wingtips. This system is designed to analyze the incoming radar frequency and transmit back a corrupted copy, injecting false range data and ghost targets to confuse the tracking solution. But the Patriot system isn't easily fooled. As the jet dispensed thousands of metallic chaff strips to create a radar-reflective cloud 300 meters wide, the ground radar began frequency hopping, shifting its waveform hundreds of times a second to filter out the noise and keep its lock on the real metal skin of the aircraft. On the ground, the battery was tearing itself apart in a controlled panic. The moment the missile cleared the rail, the commander ordered an immediate displacement. Soldiers sprinted to the launcher stations, ripping out heavy data cables, while a tow vehicle backed up to an empty launcher. The Bukovel system shifted to omnidirectional jamming, a less focused but wider net, as the radar had to stay active. If they cut the beam now, the missile would lose its steering commands, turning a $3 million interceptor into a very expensive, unguided bottle rocket. So, the radar kept screaming its position to the enemy while everyone around it prepared to run. 30 seconds to impact. The bomber was pulling hard through its turn, bleeding altitude and energy. The Khibiny system cycled through jamming frequencies, but the Patriot was adapting in real time. The missile detonated roughly 60 meters from the airframe, its proximity fuse triggering a wall of preformed tungsten fragments. At that distance, the spread was too thin to kill, but it was enough to hurt. The bomber shuddered violently as warning lights cascaded across the dashboard. They were still flying, but the game had just changed from a bombing run to a survival horror story. The pilot faced a choice that had to be made in milliseconds: abort and run for Crimea with a damaged bird, or press toward the release basket and drop those bombs on Kherson as briefed. He chose the latter, shoving the throttles forward to claw back lost airspeed. On the ground, the battery commander watched the track data with cold calculation. He authorized a second shot. The radar had now been active for over 40 seconds. Russian fire coordination was certainly processing this continuous emission for another Grad rocket salvo. Every additional missile meant 15 more seconds of required radar time, 15 more seconds of broadcasting his exact coordinates to every artillery piece in the sector. But if he didn't fire, 3,000 kilograms of high explosives would glide 70 kilometers into a residential neighborhood. He fired. The second interceptor roared into the sky, chasing a bomber that was now at 18,000 feet with a quarter of its countermeasures already spent. The Patriot was getting smarter with every second of data, learning exactly how the Russian pilot broke and how the jammer cycled. The second missile didn't miss. It detonated close enough to pepper the fuselage with tungsten, sending the right engine temperature gauge climbing into the red. One missile presents a geometry problem for a pilot. 3 missiles launched seconds apart create a mathematical impossibility. They arrive from 3 different slices of airspace, each closing from a different angle, creating an inescapable kill box. Turn to defeat the first, and you fly directly into the path of the second. Dive to avoid the second, and the third has a clean shot against a 14-meter wingspan that is now moving 200 kilometers per hour slower than when the engagement started. The bomber pilot tried another brake turn, hauling the stick over as the last of his chaff cartridges fired from nearly empty dispensers. The moment the third missile cleared the rail, the radar operator on the ground switched the system to passive. He was done transmitting. The missiles in the air had enough reflected energy to ride home on, and the battery had overstayed its welcome by exactly 12 seconds. 73 kilometers away and 14,000 feet up, the Sukhoi Su-34 ran out of answers. Airspeed had dropped below 680 kilometers per hour. Countermeasures were dry. The first of the 3 missiles detonated within 15 meters of the left wing. The blast wave shredded the control surfaces, severed the remaining hydraulic lines, and punched through the engine housing like it was made of paper. The second missile detonated below the fuselage moments later, snapping the airframe's spine. Flight control vanished instantly. The bomber rolled uncontrollably as systems failed faster than the human brain could process. The third missile never even needed to arrive. The $36 million aircraft came apart over the Black Sea, turning into a cloud of burning debris and unspent fuel. Neither FAB-1500 bomb was released. The strike on the city never happened. The only thing that fell from the sky was a rain of aluminum and regret.